G'day and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Kevin, and today we've got a pretty special guest, someone that's got a pretty raw and authentic story, particularly around drugs and alcohol.
Yes, I do.
So thanks for being here, Ben.
Man, absolutely stoked to be here. Thanks for having me on, bro.
It's my pleasure. I guess what I wanted to dive into to start off is just if you give us a bit of a rundown of who you are, what you're doing now, and if you can sort of take us back to the version of Ben that was sort of stuck in this cycle that you speak a lot about
Yeah, for
in
sure.
your social media.
For sure. So I'm Ben Lowe. I'm 32 years old, about to turn 33. I've got a 7-year-old son who is actually probably the reason that I'm still here, to be fair. I am a men's, I guess you call it personal development coach, but specifically working with men to help them become leaders, whether it's as a father, as a partner, or as a businessman. And I help them to overcome self-sabotage. Now, self-sabotage has many different facets, right? It's multifaceted, I guess you could say. It's, whether it's drugs, alcohol, womanizing, gambling, pornography, overworking, overtraining, or anything else that men are using or designing their life around to try and avoid discomfort. So I sort of help men to face that shit. I guess face it head on, because a lot of us spend pretty much our whole life avoiding it. To step up and really step into that authentic leadership they can, be capable of. So I guess that's in a high level who I am. I run a community called the New Age Man, helping men to overcome the same things that I once went through, which we'll dive into in a second. But as you said, I had a pretty extensive history with drugs and alcohol, and that's, I guess, what put me on this path now to want to help others, because I know from the depths of addiction how hard it can be to break out of that, whatever addiction it is, whatever it looks like. So yeah, I guess to take it all the way back to what got me to where I am today. I mean, we could be here all day talking about this because, I guess it always comes back to trauma, right? Trauma is where it all comes back to. And it's funny when we talk about trauma because so many different people think, oh, well, I didn't have trauma in my life. I wasn't sexually abused. I didn't have a violent father or anything like that. But we all see trauma as different things, yeah? And I think for me, the most traumatic experience or the most life-changing experience that I had that really stands out to me from a young age, which really, I guess, put the pendulum in motion for who I become later on in my life, was when my parents split up when I was 13. And obviously, having a family that's together, and I guess if you were from the outside looking in, our family life probably looked perfect. It was, and me and my sister were none the wiser that there was problems within the marriage. One day mum comes out to us and says, your father and I are getting a divorce. They'd been sleeping in separate rooms for a very long time, but I just thought there was, dad snoring or something like that, as an innocent little mind thinks, I definitely saw them fighting a lot, but because we grew up around that stress and that anger and I guess that high pressure that, we had dad who was a worker, owned a business. So he was always, working from about 6 a.m. in the morning. He'd be out the door, wouldn't get home till 6 p.m. Then his way of coping with stress was sitting in front of the TV with a bowl of scotch. So that was him every night, right? And then mum was a school teacher and she couldn't separate being a teacher at work and then being a teacher at home. And so we never really got the nurturing that we needed from a young age. But going back to the event that took place, like they broke up when I was about 13 years old. And that really, I guess, set the pendulum in motion, because not long after that I started drinking. Because obviously I'd seen my dad doing this. I thought it was normal. And so I couldn't wait to grow up. As you think about yourself when you're about 10 years old, what's the one thing that all these kids say? I just want to be 16. I just want to grow up. I just want to be doing all the things that the adults are doing. And now where we are, we look back and we're like, man, I wish I could be 10 years old again, enjoying life like I was. And so 13 years old, I learned that the easiest way for me to avoid my problems was alcohol, because I could literally pop a bottle, have a drink, have a shot, whatever it might be, and all of a sudden all my problems went away. So that went on for a few years. I'd just be hanging out with the boys at the skate park, because I was, always a skater boy, down at the skate park, and everyone around there was a little bit older. So I was smoking weed, drinking and all that sort of stuff. And so I saw that as normal. And got to about 15 and I started smoking weed. I just moved out of home when I was 15 years old, because the whole family life for the last 2 years had just been chaotic, like absolutely chaotic. Mum was using us to get against dad. Dad was using us to get against mum. They'd tell us one thing, we'd go tell the other parent, then the other parent would tell us another thing, they'd go tell us. And it was like there was just this massive turmoil between us. And it was almost like me and my sister were being used as a tool of war to get back at the other parent, you know. And at a young age, it was just like so much for us in our, you know, little brains to handle. And so at 15, I got given an ultimatum because I've been playing up a little bit, drinking a lot, going out on the weekends, not listening to anything my parents said. Because from a very young age, I was always very defiant. I didn't like being told what to do. And I got given an ultimatum. You either follow my rules, this is my mum speaking, or you move out. And so I thought, you know what, I'll give it a crack. And I moved out of home at 15. And had you have asked me then, I would have played the victim and said that they kicked me out, right? Trying to, you know, get that sympathy from everyone and all that sort of stuff. And it's funny looking back at that now because I really see how I shaped my life around being the victim for such a long period of time, which is probably why I got stuck in addiction for so long, right? It was almost a way of me getting my needs met to some degree, you know? If I was a victim, that means people give me sympathy. If I get sympathy, I'm getting attention.
Yeah.
But so 15 started smoking weed, and the same day that I started smoking weed, I also started selling it. So I had my first job from 13 till 16, which was working at McDonald's, and so I used a bit of my money that I'd earned, and bought, I think it was an ounce of weed. It was the first time I ever bought weed, and then I knew that lots of people that I used to hang around with would want to buy it, so that was, I guess, where my career as an entrepreneur started as well. Crazy how we get the business mindset, right? And if there's one thing I took from my dad, it's definitely that. It's the business mindset, right? Always be on the hustle.
Yeah.
So 15, started selling weed, and the next few years of my life were just really chaotic. I moved back into my parents' home at about 16 and a half, I think it was. I was out of home for maybe a year or just over a year. And once again, moved back into home. But this is when my drug business really took off, because now I had the stability of, you know, being in a home where I didn't have to pay rent or anything like that. And so I was literally at home all day just smoking cones, playing Xbox, treating my parents like they were stupid and had no idea what I was doing. Like, I just think about it. I was in my dad's family home, and there'd be probably smoke just coming out the window, you know, like as I'm blowing cones out. And if you smoke cones, you know what it smells like. You can smell it a mile away.
Yeah.
So my dad would come home from work and blow up at me, and I'd be like, "Are you serious? Like, you're a dickhead. What are you talking about? I'm not on weed. I'm not smoking. What are you talking about?" Play dumb. And it obviously caused a lot of problems in our family household. And so not long after that, I ended up moving out again. But there was a couple of other things that had sort of taken place during this time. So obviously with the heavy drinking and the heavy smoking of weed, I was going to a lot of parties. And I learned at a young age that it was fun to go out after parties and start opening people's cars' doors and going into people's houses. You know, so I really got stuck into that cycle of crime because a couple of the people I've been hanging around were doing the same thing. You know, monkey see, monkey do. So I fell in the pattern of, you know, doing burglaries, breaking into cars, stealing anything that wasn't bolted down. You know, just a real delinquent. And I think it was just before I turned 18, my dad got a knock on the door, and there were 6 police officers there to raid my house looking for stolen property. And that was the nail in the coffin for my relationship with mine and my old boy. And so from there, moving out of home, 18, I once again was hanging around with a lot of old people, and they were smoking ice. And so I went from, you know, smoking weed, selling a little bit of weed, to then smoking ice. And I remember the first day that I tried it, the guy that had given it to me had like a moment of consciousness almost. And he looked at me and he goes, "Brother, are you sure you want to try this? Because I can promise you your life will never be the same." I can promise you right now, it definitely wasn't. Because from that point onwards, for the next probably 8 years of my life, I was heavily addicted to crystal meth. My whole life revolved around it. Every day was, you know, smoking, selling, trying to find more, chasing it, doing whatever I had to do to get it. And that was life for 8 years, bro. So that's a bit of a high level, and I'm sure we can break that down a little bit further.
Yeah.
But I could talk about this all day, bro. But I want to obviously leave it up to you to dive further into that. But yeah, that was a very, very dark time in my life, but it was also the most beautiful thing because it made me the man that I am today.
That's beautiful, man. I appreciate you sharing. It's funny, like connecting on social media, and you share a lot online, but it's really fascinating to actually see how similar our stories are. At least sort of like the skate park culture, and I guess the circles of people that I was surrounding myself with.
For sure.
And it's actually quite confronting to see like how close I was to going down a really, really bad path. I guess something that you touched on that I do want to touch on is like I guess the what was modeled to us and how much that played into the behavior and your trajectory. For me, I had an alcoholic father, and you know, I was gonna make a video about this the other day, but especially in Australia, it's like such a strong culture of drinking.
It's normalized. It's so normalized, bro. Drinking
Yeah.
and that whole even
Yeah.
bendering culture is so normalized in Australian culture.
Yeah, yeah, and you like there's a pub on every corner. There's billboards, slogans,
Yep.
and yeah. How much do you think that played a role in your journey?
Well, I think that's a really good question because, like, thinking back now, I can definitely see that it was a huge part of why I ended up the way that I was, right? But, you know, this is the thing. If I think back to it, like, it's only through knowing what I know now about what I needed as a child and what I wasn't getting that I see that. But if you'd asked me back then, I would have said that, you know, my dad was a great dad, you know, but he wasn't present. Yeah. I didn't understand that at that time. But what I did see was that anytime he was present, he had a drink in his hand. You know, it'd be lunchtime on a Sunday or lunchtime on a Saturday and he'd be finished work and he'd pour a scotch. And his scotches, you know, if you got a standard glass, there's like more scotch and ice than there is Coke, right? And I remember this actually having a conversation at the dinner table one night. I remember mum saying that you drink too much to my dad, and he got really, really upset about it, really, really angry. And, you know, tried to defend himself, saying that, you know, he wasn't an alcoholic, he didn't have a problem and he could stop if he wanted to stop. And it's funny because I've done this so many times in my life, right? Where he said he was going to stop, so he stopped for 30 days to prove a point. But then as soon as the 30 days was gone, what do you do? Go straight back to drinking a bottle of scotch a night. You know, this is, once again, the same thing that I see playing out in my life. I remember when I was trying to get sober, I'd be like, all right, I'm going to go 3 months. 3 months, no drinks, no drugs, no partying, no bendering, nothing like that. And I'd go out with the boys and I'd still be there while they're drinking and taking drugs, and I'd be lining up the lines for them and everything, right? Just to prove a point that I could do it. But then as soon as the 3 months rolled around, after feeling so good for 3 months, I'd celebrate. How would I celebrate? By doing the exact thing that I said I wasn't going to do for the last 3 months, and it just go all out the window.
Yeah.
And it was like that self-sabotage because all of a sudden I started feeling good. And I think about like that with my dad, because I saw that take place time and time and time again, to the point where even now, I had a conversation with him the other day, and he's like just been baptized and come to God, which is really, really interesting because as a kid, I used to go to youth group and used to go to church, and he used to make fun of me. You know, he used to make fun of me and call me gay and all sorts of stuff for going to church. And I was like, what? But I think it's very much to do with his environment, right? His partner is very religious. He remarried after my mum. And yeah, so we got baptized the other day, and he was telling me that he's going 40 days sober because obviously Jesus went 40 days and 40 nights in the desert. And so as his commitment to God, he was doing 40 days. And it was really funny because we're having this conversation, I think maybe 2 weeks ago. And then just it would have been about 3 weeks ago, on the weekend just gone. Would have been the weekend just gone. It was my son's birthday. Yeah, it was the weekend just gone, 2nd of August. I was having a conversation with my dad about this, and he was saying that he's going to Indonesia the next day to go see his wife. And he's like, yeah, so I was having a conversation with God, and I made a deal with him. I was going to go 40 days. So what I'm going to do is when I get to the airport, I'm going to be on day 21. And so I'll just put a bit of a pause on that. And then I'll go to Indonesia for a week or two. When I come back, I'll give him an extra 7 days. And so it's like seeing that and seeing that his lack of integrity and his lack of being able to keep a commitment, it's like, it's no wonder that I struggled with that for so long. You know, making promises and not being able to follow through on them, especially with that side of things, with the drinking side of things. For me, growing up seeing that, it's like that was so normalized. It was what was done. You know, my dad, mum was never a drinker. She literally had one wine and get a headache. But dad, on the other hand, it was not often that I'd see him without a drink in his hand when he's at home. So I definitely say that would have been a big part as to why I ended up on the trajectory I ended up on, which was, and this is the thing, I was never really addicted to drugs. No one ever is. Okay, I don't believe that there is a drug addiction, an alcohol addiction, a porn addiction. There's an addiction to avoiding discomfort. There's an addiction to avoiding emotions. There's an addiction to running from yourself. And that's what I've seen play out time and time and time again in my dad's life. And once again, for me, from the age of 13, I learned that that was the easiest way to avoid my hardship in my life, my stress in my life, my unwanted emotions, and suppress.
Yeah, I can really see that, and it makes me think of this idea that kids won't do what you tell them to do, but they'll do what you do.
Monkey see, monkey do, but it's more,
Yeah,
it's exactly that. It's don't do as I say. It's like do as I do, right?
yeah,
Whether they like it or not.
yeah, and those subtleties I think really play out. Um, Even if you have a resentment towards your parents or something like that, that example still is like really ingrained that I find.
Yeah, 100%.
And yeah, I think it's just really a really important thing to touch on because I think particularly around self sabotage, a lot of the time you don't know why
Or where it comes from.
where it comes from
Mm.
exactly. So yeah, I think you touched on that really really well.
Well, with that being said, then Kevin, where do you think? I guess where's your belief around where self sabotage actually comes from?
I think a lot of it really just revolves around how we see ourselves
Yeah, most definitely, bro.
and the self worth that we have.
Mm.
Um, Again, that there's a lot of subtleties with that because you can think or you can create an image of who you think you are or who you like to think you are, but deep down, there's a lot of these core wounds that end up driving our behavior, and that's what I've learned in my own experience, I guess. Yeah, trying to put certain substances down and having, a really good uh, like month on month, like feeling great, doing all the right things, and then wondering why I'm like back where I
Back
was.
where square one, right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it was for me, bro. Exactly that, right? Because even though I wanted, and this is, if anyone listening, this is exactly where self sabotage comes from, even though you might want the outcome. If, like, for me, my personal experience was that I didn't believe I deserved that. So I guess to go back to where I was talking about before with, 8 years of ice addiction, from 15 years old till 30, I sold drugs. And so my belief was that I'd only ever make money selling drugs. My belief was that I'd only ever be happy using drugs. My belief was that the only time I'd ever feel like I was good enough was when I was drinking or with women or with drugs. And so once again, every time that I'd start to feel good outside of that scope, it's like it almost, hit that thermostat and then it would kick in and I'd push myself back down to where it was comfortable. And so time and time and time again, I'd climb and I'd fall and I'd climb and I'd fall and I'd climb and I'd fall because the internal belief was that I wasn't good enough, I wasn't worthy, and that the only person I'd ever be was a drug dealer, or the only time I'd ever be successful was as a drug dealer.
Yeah, fascinating. It runs really deep. Runs really really deep. I guess like where I want to go now, I guess is what was your turning point, but also what I think you've really covered where it all started and what sort of imprint you created for yourself in the early days. But what really turned it all around?
It's a really, really good question because I know that a lot of people talk about having those turning point moments, that one key thing. I think for me, I had multiple. And I know Morgan says this, I actually picked this up off him, right? You get the feather, you get the tap on the shot, and then you get the Mack truck. You get little warning signs from the universe, I believe. You get these little nudges like, hey, man, maybe you need to slow down a little bit. Hey, bro, like you're edging on the edge of falling off now. It's like, okay, time to slow the fuck down. And I remember, so I didn't actually touch on this before, but so obviously through the 8 years of ice addiction, I spent 4 years of that in prison as well. I was locked up 6 times, so you could say that I was a slow learner for different little stints here and there, but all related to just drug-related behaviour, whether it be getting caught with amounts of ice, whether it be getting caught with paraphernalia. I had quite a lengthy history. My first, as I was saying before, charge when the police kicked my door in for my dad was actually 54 break and enters at the age of 16. And so with that extensive criminal history, anytime that anything happened to me, I was a good chance of not getting released on bail. And so anytime that I would get bail, I'd go on the run. I'd try and make the most of the time that I'd have out, the free time. And I remember, I think I was about 21 the first time I went to jail. And then for the next, it would have been 6 years. I spent a total of 4 years in jail, and it was it would have actually would have been 20. So yeah, for 6 years I was in and out of prison. The longest being a year and a half. And the last time that I was in there, I remember looking around and I seen the same people coming in and out, because I was in there for a good year or so, right? Like I said, a year and a half, sorry. And I remember looking around and just thinking to myself, look at these fucking losers. And then I had that little light bulb moment because it's the first time in I don't know how long I'd actually been, dry for long enough to be sober and actually have a clear head. And it sort of dawned on me that I was one of those losers. And I thought about my upbringing. I thought about my life. I thought about everything that I'd achieved as a young man, everything that I'd been through, everything that I was doing. And I was like, I'm way better than this. And it was literally just that light bulb moment. But I had no idea what I was going to do to turn my life around. I had no skills, no trades, no nothing. My only job was from 13 to 16 working at Macca's as a, burger flipper. And the only other thing I knew how to do was make money selling drugs. So I was like, what am I going to do? And I heard about one of the other boys that I knew that had been in prison a few times as well, getting out and becoming a personal trainer. And one of the things that actually really saved me was fitness in jail. Like I'd never trained before in my life. And I started training in jail and, started to look like a bit of a 14-year-old schoolgirl. I had like, a bit of a pec going on, might have needed a bit of sports bra. I was like, this is the first time I've had muscle on my body. And I felt really good about myself. I was like, this is great because it was the first time without drugs or alcohol that I genuinely felt like a sense of pride in myself, felt a sense of confidence to some degree, felt a sense of purpose almost. And like when it comes to Queensland prisons, the training that we're doing, there's no weights or anything like that. It's squats, lunges, dips, push-ups, chin-ups, and we haven't got weights. So we're using other prisoners for squats. We're curling broomsticks with buckets of water and all sorts. We get real creative, right? And I'm like, well, if I can put on a bit of size in here and, I guess get a bit of a crew together in here, there's no reason why I can't do that on the outside with all the equipment available. So I did my PT course, and not long after starting my PT course, my partner at the time fell pregnant with my son William, who's now 7 years old. But I was still caught up in the whole drug trade. So even though I was out of prison, I got straight back into the ice. I was still, smoking meth most weekends, whilst also being a PT and trying to preach about personal fitness and health and all sorts of stuff and wondering why my business wasn't taking off. And there was a couple of small moments that happened around the same time. So my partner was pregnant. I then also got involved with a motorcycle gang, and some shit went pear-shaped and could have ended really, really, really badly. I'm glad that it didn't go any further than it did. And there was also a point in time where my partner's ex-partner, who she also had a kid to, had gotten out of jail and put a gun down my throat over $20,000. And that for me was the real nail in the coffin for that relationship and also for that side of my life, because I definitely had that, I guess, feather on the shoulder, that tap on the shoulder, and then getting hit by the Mack truck moment. And that was definitely the Mack truck. And so not long after that, I left her, left that whole lifestyle. And this is still something that I wouldn't say I hold so much shame around anymore, but I held a lot of shame around for a very long time. I actually left her while she was pregnant. But I knew that if I didn't get away from that I'd probably still be stuck in that lifestyle. I'd probably still be doing the same things. I'd probably end up dead or in jail. And so as hard as it was, I left her, and it was really hard because I didn't even have anything to do with my son for the first 6 months of his life, which once again, to this day, is still something that haunts me because I'm still constantly trying to build that relationship with him. But that was really, I guess, the biggest turning point, because I knew that if I didn't get out of that lifestyle, I'd have a little boy who's probably now, he'd be 7 years old now, that'd still be growing up in that same environment day in, day out. So, yeah, once again, like I said, he was probably the thing that saved my life in a roundabout way, and I didn't even know it at the time. But if I think about it now, it was literally all because of him.
Powerful, bro. Yeah. Yeah, there was a couple of things that came up when you were sharing all of that, but I feel like I've had my own experience with kind of thinking that I've got it all together and sort of looking at everyone else and like thinking that's not me. And Yeah, it's really funny that I guess we can play these like mind games with ourselves, or we can put ourselves on certain pedestals, but what's going on beneath the surface is like really real.
Yeah, we struggle to look
And
at ourselves, right? It's actually that ego that gets in the way. It's like
yeah,
justifying to us our behaviors so we don't have to face it because God forbid that we be the bad guy,
yeah,
you know?
totally. I guess the question I want to ask, and you definitely touched on it, but what do you think the like when it comes to like guilt and shame,
Mm.
like how much do you think that and our environment plays a role and played a role in your journey?
Okay, I might answer that one in two separate parts because it's a great question, but I think there's two separate parts to it, right? Because I think that guilt and shame was something that I didn't feel until later, right? But environment, let's touch on that first, right?
Yeah.
So environment for me was massive because obviously I was surrounding myself with people who were doing these sorts of things. And if I really look back to the reason I started using drugs, it was because as a kid I never fit in. I never felt like I had my place in the world. I never feel like I, really, like I had friends, don't get me wrong, and I never had any issues at school. I wasn't bullied or anything like that, but I just never felt a connection towards other people. I didn't really feel like I was a part of any specific group. Like I'd say, these are my boys. I had different groups I'd float between, and that was me. I just felt that I found it really hard to relate to these people. I also now think about that, and I also think that's a story that I made up for myself because it was also my way of, once again, getting my needs met, being different to everyone else. Because then that would get me attention to some degree because I was different, right? But then it also stopped me from being able to actually create those really essential connections at a young age to know that I did belong in the world. And so at 15, when I started smoking weed, 13, when I started drinking, I realized that, hey, if I have drugs and if I drink, I've got people around me. And so that for me was I guess the biggest thing when it comes to environment. It was if I hadn't have been in those environments, I wouldn't have found my place in those environments. I think I would have found somewhere else for myself to relate. I would have found other outlets. And then obviously moving through the years of being a criminal, it just graduated because of the different people I started hanging around. Started off just being smoking weed, and then graduated to smoking ice, then graduated to, doing copious amounts of ice, hanging around bikies, doing armed robs and all sorts of stuff like that because of the environment. And I know for a fact, if I hadn't have been in those environments, I probably wouldn't have made those decisions. But for me, because as a young man, I didn't know who I was doing everything I possibly could to try and fit in. Yeah, so
Yeah.
if that's, I guess there's two parts to that as well, right? So environment's a factor, but I think it's even more influential if people don't understand, men and women don't understand who they actually are at their authentic core. Right? When you understand who you are, you have a purpose, you have drive, direction, and really, really clear values. I feel it's a lot harder for us to then steer off the path because we go, whoop, that doesn't align with me, as opposed to being, oh, I want to try that. Let's see what that's like. If it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me, right? Because we don't know who we are. To answer the second part of that, the shame and the guilt. Now, after getting out of the whole ice side of things and the whole crystal meth world, because you think about this, right? Like dealing with tweakers, like absolute tweakers that are awake for me, sometimes double digits. And I'd go to sleep for a day and then I'd be awake for double digits. Yeah. That would be something that was completely different to dealing with people who are snorting coke or smoking weed. Yeah. So when I was in that state of, I guess, addiction with ice, I was completely disassociated from everything. I didn't know what guilt and shame were. I was doing things that I wouldn't even dream of doing if I was sober. But once I got off the pipe, I then turned to using cocaine and alcohol because it's more acceptable, right? It's what everyone does, it's what all the boys do. So I was at the gym, and I started using steroids, and all the boys that were using steroids were jamming heaps of testosterone, eating really well, training hard throughout the week. But then come the weekend, they were partying. They'd party hard. And so come Monday, Tuesday, they feel like shit. Same cycle would start again. They're back in the gym. And then all of a sudden come the weekend, just doing the same thing over and over and over again. And so I think for me, the thing that played a part in that around the shame and guilt, it was definitely a lot of shame and guilt because number one, I had these things that I was hiding from my past. I didn't want anyone to know who I was. And I think that, I don't think this, I know this actually. I know that shame can only live in the darkness. If you shine a light on shame, it no longer exists. Right? Because what is shame? Shame is us worrying about what other people are going to think of us because of actions that we've taken in the past, right? Guilt is obviously very similar, but it's like because we know that we've done something that doesn't align with our morals or values. And it wasn't until I actually got away from the ice that I really got clear on my conscience and really got clear on what my morals and values. And still to this day, I'm constantly adapting and growing with my values and beliefs and morals. But coming out of that whole addiction side of things, because I got raised in a good family, everything I was doing at that time was completely against my morals, but I was so disassociated, completely numb to it all that it didn't really mean shit. But then coming out of it, yeah, like every weekend I go out and party. I might sleep with a girl and regret it. I might, do something that I regretted whilst being out on the piss. And so then I'd feel shame. And what's the easiest way to get rid of shame? Well, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to avoid that problem and I'm going to take more drugs. I'm going to drink more. I had at the time, an infant son that was growing up without a father that I didn't talk about. So once again, shame. What's the easiest way to not think about that? Drink, take drugs, womanize, gamble, overtrain, overwork. I'd absolutely rinse myself in the gym. I'd beat myself up. It was borderline, self-abuse, the way that I'd train in the gym. I'd overwork. I'd be on the hustle. I'd be on the phones calling up leads. I worked at Good Life and they used to give me the phone list and I was the only person that would be there calling all the guys that hadn't been to the gym in 2 weeks, offering free PT sessions because I just didn't want to stop or slow down. It was the easiest way for me to distract myself. And I literally engineered my entire life around avoiding that part of myself. And it wasn't until probably 3 years ago when I really started doing the deep work, got completely sober and allowed myself to feel for the first time in almost my entire life that any of that changed. So to answer your question, environment, massive factor. We don't adapt the environment, we adapt to the environment. The old fit in or fuck off mentality, which goes back to our ancestral times of being in a tribe. If you're outside of the tribe, you're dead. You got to find another tribe. And so that's what I did. I jumped from tribe to tribe because I either outgrew that one or I didn't fit in with this one or whatever it might be. And I found my place with the people that were doing the bad shit because they're the delinquents. They're the misfits. They're the people that are cast out from society. And, I wasn't good at sport, wasn't good at, academics or anything like that at school. I was a bit of a dropkick. So where do dropkicks go? To the skate park and smoke weed and drink piss. And then with the shame and guilt side of things, it's like I didn't want to sit with my shit. I wasn't man enough to. There's no way I was man enough to sit with my stuff at the time. And so the easiest way for me to get through that was to engineer my life around avoiding it with drugs and alcohol. Because every weekend I'd be out drinking, chasing girls, taking drugs. Does that answer your question?
No, it definitely does. And yeah, some really good points you made. I think for myself as well, it's been the biggest part of the, transition for me. Like I was drinking every day for a number of years. Definitely didn't get as dark as maybe where you went with it, but
Everyone's got their hard, bro.
Yeah, everyone has their hard. But yeah, I guess the biggest thing for me has been allowing myself to feel, and
That's powerful.
I think when you don't allow yourself to feel, it almost just compounds and builds up, and it almost ironically makes you shy away from them more and more and more.
Yeah.
So I guess where I want to take this is in the work that you're doing now, especially with the people that you're working with, how much emphasis is there on feeling and actually creating a space? What does that look like?
It's a really good question, bro. It's a really beautiful question because it's funny, right? Every single one of the men that I work with, every single one, there's not one that hasn't come to me with this. Come to me with a drug and alcohol problem. Not one of them has had a problem with drugs and alcohol. Not one. There's not one that's had an addiction with drugs and alcohol that they couldn't overcome when we understood this one thing. And it was exactly that. Allowing themselves to feel their emotions. We as human beings are emotional creatures. It's one of the most beautiful parts of the human experience. Yet, as a very young man, I got taught to suppress. Big boys don't cry. Don't be a little bitch. So vulnerability equals weakness, right? And once again, especially in the world that I was in, that was true and true. In jail, if you show weakness, you're going to get robbed. You're going to get jumped. You're going to get treated like shit. You're going to be a little bitch, right? Not going to be respected. In the world that I was in with the drug trade, same thing. You get stabbed, shot, whatever it might be. You get robbed. That was what happens if you show vulnerability. So I actually had to engineer my life around suppressing everything which was ingrained in me internally to actually, be an emotional creature, because I always have been, right? And so with the men that I work with now, it's about helping them to see that this is a lie we've been sold for so long, that vulnerability is weakness, that emotions are weak, that emotions are bad. But here's the truth, like anyone, absolutely anyone, the weakest of men can suppress their emotions. But it takes a true strong leader to be able to be vulnerable, to show up authentically, to speak his truth, to show his emotions, and actually be like, hey, I'm actually not okay. And I think the old model as well of men have to do it all alone, and now even coming into the society we're in, where women feel they have to do it all alone, it completely takes away from the stages of dependence, right? As an infant, we're dependent, right? We have to have our mum to wipe our bum, to feed us, to clothe us, to do everything for us. And then we start to get a little bit older, right? And we get into something called independence. Now, a lot of people don't even make it past the dependence stage. They still need someone else to feel like they're whole, right? But they get to, some men, some women will get to a place of independence. And that for them is safety, right? Because it means they can rely on themselves. They don't need anyone else for anything. But then there's this other stage that doesn't get spoken about all that much, right? And I think this is important, especially for men, but especially for leaders and just for us as human beings, right? Which is interdependence. And interdependence is the ability to not just rely on yourself. It's knowing that, yes, I've got it, but also having the ability and the vulnerability to go, you know what? I'd also like some help. Because collaboration is what we're meant to do as human beings. There's a term Ubuntu, which is an African proverb. And what it means is I am because we are, right? And so what that means is that we're not meant to be isolated. We're meant to work together as a collective, because that's what human beings are made for. Yet for us as men, we shut ourselves off from that. We suppress, we push things down. And this is where a lot of this, violence, a lot of this, toxic masculinity behavior comes from. It's because men are suppressing themselves and have been for so many years. And I know that you can probably feel this, and I know that everyone around us is feeling this, but there's a massive shift that's taking place. And it's awesome that we're having these conversations, because I really feel like that we're ahead of the bell curve, because there is going to be a big shift that happens, and people that aren't able to step up and actually really step into that true masculine leadership are going to get left behind. Because women are starting to understand that, a man doesn't look like controlling. A man doesn't look like having to provide and that's all he does, but it means being present. It means actually showing up authentically. It means actually being there for the kids and being in the nest, because the father's role in, parenthood is just as important as the mother's. It's not just about the mum now. Right. So I think that, the work that we do within the New Age Man is really helping men to understand this, to really help them to step into who they are. But I guess the biggest part about this is helping them to step into their authentic leadership, whatever that looks like. Because especially nowadays, we see a lot of people pleasing, a lot of the nice guy, which is trying to keep everyone else happy, because once upon a time, there was probably a time in these men's lives or these women's lives or whoever it might be, where they felt that they had to perform to fit in, they had to perform to be liked. And so they actually lost their authentic self along the way. And that people pleasing is what leads to, manipulative behavior, outbursts and resentment, breakdown of relationships. And a lot of men are actually realizing they're not even with people that they respect, or not being respected by their partners because of that. And so this is a lot of the stuff that we do in the New Age Man, is helping these men to actually understand this about themselves, but really get clear on who they are at an authentic level, and actually being able to show up in that no matter what it means. Because vulnerability isn't weakness. Vulnerability is truly strength. It's about going, hey, this is me. And if you don't like it, that's fucking fine. But this is who I am. And the people that are meant to be in my life will be.
Well said, man. Yeah. Yeah. Man, you've just been speaking some truth, and I'm really enjoying it.
You look a bit shook there, Kev.
It's no, it's like everything that I think we all need reminding of, and it's definitely something that needs to be shared like more and more. I guess a question that I want to ask, and I guess something that has been challenging for me, is sort of moving from the dependent to the interdependent.
Yeah.
But within that, it's like you actually need to build a capacity for it.
Yeah.
And I guess what I want to ask is what that's looked like for you,
Beautiful.
and how that kind of translates to maybe the people that you're working with that have pushed away responsibility and accountability, and then all of a sudden have this new outlook?
So one word for this, or I guess it's 2 words, is exposure therapy.
Yeah.
Because this is the thing, right? Dependence. There's a couple of different, faces to that. Dependence also means a lot of the time victimhood. It's like if I don't have to be dependent, if I'm dependent on other people, it stops me from taking responsibility.
Yeah.
And then that victimhood side of things also comes into play, especially around this, right? So victimhood is outsourcing the blame, not actually taking responsibility or personal responsibility for your life. And so with a lot of the men that I work with, they are in that place of it's everyone else's fault, right? Being able to blame other people and not being able to rely on themselves to some degree because they've always had someone else there to do everything for them, whether it be a partner, whether it be a friend, whether it be the boys, whoever it might be. And this is a learned behavior at a very young age because maybe their mothers did everything for them. Maybe they didn't have a mother that was reliable. And so they felt they couldn't depend on anyone else, right? And so they had to just depend on themselves. But either way, breaking into that stage of independence is about being able to step up and take ownership of their lives and realizing that, circumstances take place. And this is one of the things that I take a lot of the boys through, right? And this is something that I had to do as well. Because for years, I blamed my parents for everything that was going wrong in my life. If it wasn't for their divorce, if they hadn't kicked me out, right? Like I told that story so often that I actually started to believe that they kicked me out. What a fucking loser. Right? And truth be told, they asked me to leave and I said, okay, see you later. No dramas. Well, they gave me an ultimatum, I should say. Sorry, they didn't even ask me to leave. They didn't want me to. They gave me an ultimatum hoping that I'd come back around. But there's so much of this, right? So much of us playing the victim because it's easier to do that than have to look at our shit.
Yeah.
And so with a lot of these men, it's and this is what it was for me, was actually looking at all the wrong that had taken place in my life, all the things that had gone bad, and looking at what my role in that was. Getting caught with 2 ounces of ice. What was my role in that? Well, I was out in a car at 2:00 in the morning in a suburb of Brisbane, which is pretty dodgy. If I wasn't rolling around a car at 2:00 in the morning near a train station at in Brisbane, and looking tweaked off my head, at this point in time, I think I was about 59 kilos dripping wet, just absolutely pinning. Probably wouldn't have got pulled over, But it was the cops' fault, wasn't it? I hate the police because they locked me up. Right, that was my story at the time. They took my freedom away. If it wasn't for, even this, this is a really recent one. Sometimes there's a lot of resentment towards my kid's mum because of the life that she lives. But I also made the choice to go through with having a kid with her. That's on me. So I've got to take personal responsibility for that. And that's one of the hardest things I've had to do. And so I guess going from dependence to independence, and then from independence to interdependence, dependence to independence is about taking ownership of your life. Okay, I don't need anyone else, but it's nice to have other people around. But it's getting to a point of being so comfortable within your own space that you don't need a partner, that you don't need the money, that you don't need the friends, that you don't need the drugs, that you don't need the whatever it might be, right? Because dependence isn't just on people; it's on substance, it's on a vice of some kind, it's on external validation, even whatever that looks like for them. It could be buying things that make them feel good. So getting to the root cause of all that first. And then getting away from that, realizing that they're enough within themselves and helping them to do that through building self-worth. And how do we build self-worth? It's very, very simple. Be a fucking man of your word. Make your promises and keep them. Set small tasks for yourself each day and commit to getting them done, whatever the fuck it is. Because every time you do that, what you're doing is you're telling yourself that you're worth it, right? Easiest way to build self-worth. Literally just pick a couple of different things, do hard shit, and start to set goals and achieve them, right? That's going to start to prove to you that you are enough, that you can do things. And this is the things that we go through in the first 4 weeks of the New Age Man. It's really helping them to discover who they are and what they need to do to become dependent on themselves rather than dependent on the others or the drugs or, their outside environment. Then we get to the stage of independence. And for a lot of men, they get stuck here because let's just say they've been let down by partners in the past. Let's just say that, as a child, their parents weren't reliable. And so they learn at a very young age that, the only way to stay safe is to be alone. And this is why a lot of guys will self-sabotage relationships as well, right? Let's just say that their mum was unreliable. She was chaotic. And so their nervous system is so conditioned to chaos that they seek that in a partner, but then get to a point of it getting too close, let's say, and they push them away because that creates safety. So it's about starting to learn to trust other people. And how do we do that? Exposure therapy. Same with everything else. It's like, hey, expose yourself to the thing to start to condition your nervous system. because dependence, independence, and interdependence all come from a place of either a regulated or dysregulated nervous system. You know, if it feels safe for them to rely on themselves, they will. If it feels safe for them to allow the trust other people, they will. But if it only feels safe for them to get their needs met through other people and not even be able to do it themselves, that's what they'll continue to do.
Yeah, man. You hit the nail on the head. And I think it's funny in my experience because I actually feel quite lucky in a way, because I feel like all of these things that were external to me like started falling away. So I had no choice but to just start from the ground up.
When you say they started to fall away, what do you mean by that, brother?
Well, I guess there was it came with a lot of like chaos and a lot of conflict, and in my own experience, it kind of just got to this like boiling point where I said like I can't continue doing this, and a lot of it was environment and mainly the people that I was sort of surrounded with.
Of course.
They weren't bad people, but I think it just was really clear to me in those moments that like if I wanted to take a certain trajectory, that these weren't the type of people that were going to help with that.
Yeah, looking around and realizing that these aren't the people that are going to get me there, right?
Yeah. So it was a choice, but it did all come at once.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I think it was probably the best thing that happened to me in a way, because it meant that I had to look at like how do I actually, and I made a video about this the other day, but rather than externalizing everything, like how do I self-resource? Like whether it's validation or confidence or trust.
We've got it all within us already. Every single one of us as human beings, we have everything we need to be successful. We have everything we need to be enough. We have everything we need. We were born with these things. But somewhere along the track, we lost them.
Yeah.
And with that suppression of emotions, it also stops us from learning more about ourselves to be able to overcome that hardship within our own lives. You know?
Totally, man. Yeah. Yeah. I guess where I want to take this is through the lens of, I guess, the people that you're working with, and also from, I guess, the more traditional, like substance AA recovery and stuff like that. Like I think the way that you've taken things, and definitely the way the world's moving. What do you feel like is different about, like, say, your approach, and is there something that you find that is like maybe quite like a bit controversial in terms of where you take things and where you take men?
I think it's with me. I'm very woo woo, right? I'm very spiritual. I do a lot with the energy side of things, yeah. But that being said, it's also very practical. It's very applicable. It's very science based, right? But if we think about traditional methods, we think about things like AA and NA. The first thing that they teach the people they work with, this is the first rule of the 12-step program, or the first step is you are powerless to addiction. What does that then mean? Well, that then means that you've given your power away to something. That means you're no longer in control of it. So the first thing that I do with the men that I work with is I take that away from them. I take away the fact that it's not an addiction. You're not fucking addicted to drugs. You're not addicted to alcohol. You're not addicted to porn. You're not addicted to women. You're addicted to escaping yourself. And what is it you're trying to escape? And that's what we start to look at. So we build a foundation of, first of all, understanding exactly where they're at, which areas in their life they're not getting their needs met in. Okay, where is it that they're starting to fall short? Is it, because they feel pressure from finances? Is it because they feel pressure in their relationship? Wherever it comes from, right? And then we take it deep. We go along the timeline. We look, okay, back to the first time that they felt that same feeling or emotion that might have come up. And what did it teach them about themselves? What did they learn at that point in their life? And usually it's going to be somewhere around 5 to 7, sometimes a little bit older, 12, 13, that there was an emotional event that took place, a SEE, if you like, severe emotional event, right? And when that takes place, what that does is it almost traps that person in that emotional state for the rest of their life. So anytime they feel that same emotion, it takes them back to the age of 12. They're not even reacting from a place of, 32 years old or 49 years old.
Yeah.
I had a guy that I was coaching the other day, he's 46 years old, and he broke down in tears when we were talking about purpose. And he said, fuck, Ben, I'm 46 years old and I don't even know who the fuck I am. And I said, brother, that's a beautiful thing, because so many men don't ever reach this point. They go through their entire life trying to be someone that they don't want to be, because that's what they got sold. That's what they believed was meant to happen, you know? And they end up getting bitter, resentful, old, and then just, you know, moving on to the next life. So the thing that we do that's different is actually helping them to see themselves for who they are. We don't treat symptoms, we treat the source of the problem, because I love this little analogy. It's like, imagine imagine you're driving along the highway, right? And you're in your car, this is you driving through life, and all of a sudden, bing, check engine light comes on. All right, so what do? Well, usually you go to the mechanic, right? But if you're finding that you're stuck in an addiction and, you know, you just go through life and keep moving through it, it's like you're just slapping a piece of black tape over the check engine light.
Yeah.
It's no problem. Driving along the highway again, boom, there's smoke coming out of the car. Put some sunglasses on, can't see them. Right? Addiction. Again, trying to treat the addiction. And then you're driving along and all of a sudden this, you know, it starts to come, there's this bit of an engine noise coming out. So you turn the music up. Addiction. Just keep using the addiction, right? And then eventually the engine breaks down, and this is going to be breakdown, burnout, or break up. And this is unfortunately where a lot of the men come to me from. It's from a point of rock bottom to some degree. But the signs were all there. Why can't I stop drinking? Why is it that I feel that I need to have a line to feel like I'm the man? Why can't I feel good enough without having a woman around me? These are all the symptoms. And it's not the drugs or the alcohol, the women or the gambling that are the problem. They're actually the solution. However, those solutions have now become maladaptive, because no longer are they serving a purpose. They're actually going against what you need. And this is what we look at within the New Age man. It's looking at the actual root cause of the problem. So that, and this is the thing, like, I'm not going to say that every single one of the men that I work with go away and they're completely sober and they never drink again. But every single one of the men that I've worked with that do the program that I do, that actually apply themselves, do the coursework, show up to the calls and get involved with it, all of that incredible results. I've got guys that have, you know, been alcoholics for 10 years, were drinking every single day, hiding it from their partner, had alcohol hiding around the house and mouthwash bottles and all sorts of stuff. You know, going to the pokies after work without telling their partners, and now 12 months sober, right? Completely changed his life, showing up differently for his partner, showing up differently for his son, actually came completely clean with everything with his beautiful wife. And because of his ownership and the way that he showed up, it's improved their relationship, because now she feels like she can trust him, because she knew something was off for a long time, but couldn't put her finger on it because he wasn't man enough to show up and obviously tell her what was going on. This is after about a month of us working together. He did that, and it was the hardest thing he ever did. But he said it was also the best thing, because now their relationship's the best it's ever been. You know, another guy that's gone off and started his own coaching business after calling me, or getting on a call with me after his wife had left. Not his wife, sorry, his partner and daughter had left, because he'd been on a bender for 4 days and hadn't come home. After 2 weeks of us working together, they were back in the same house, because he was actually able to regulate his emotions and communicate with his partner in a way that made her feel safe enough to be around him again. And this is the work that we do, you know, and there's not just one case of this. These are, you know, time and time again. I had another guy the other week that just finished his program with me, who was doing 2 or 3 grams of coke a day, up all night, drinking, you know, wouldn't come home from the office, would be at the shed drinking with the boys every afternoon. His business was falling apart. His relationship was falling to pieces. He wasn't present with his kids, to now, you know, in a better place with his partner, best relationship he's ever had with his kids. And his business is now starting to thrive, because he's actually showing up as a leader. Right? He's actually showing up as the leader he needs. And it's just all down to helping these men to understand who they are. Because we've all got an idea of what that is, but we lose it somewhere along the way. You know, and so I don't look at the drugs and the alcohol, because they're never the problem. Never the problem. All right.
Powerful.
And if we treat the symptom, you're going to continue to get these check engine lights pop up until eventually you get the breakdown, the break up, or the breakdown, the break up, and I lost one there. The burnout.
Burnout.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's really, really powerful stuff. I think a really good reframe for the people that haven't been exposed to, I guess what some may call woo-woo, but like healing through these like parts of ourselves that are like really ingrained and that can keep us stuck in like an emotion that happened 10, 20 years ago. so it's really fascinating, and I think I've had my own journey with kind of seeking out all of these different modalities for myself. What did that look like for you? Like, did you reach out to somebody, or were you able to find these tools and these methods?
Well, to get to the point where I am today, which is completely clean and sober, I haven't touched a drug or a drop of alcohol in 3 years now. I've been clean from ice for 7 years. But the thing that got me off it all eventually, got me to start turning my life around, was actually starting to watch Tony Robbins videos, learning more about myself, starting to see a different perspective of the world. And then I started to seek out mentors. I wanted to work with people that were doing the same thing, and I wanted to get there quicker. So I didn't mind having to pay to play. And it actually started out as a course that I did through a group called FMA, who were, I guess, a PTing sort of certificate. But they taught a lot of the spiritual side of things, and I guess, showed me a lot about the way that the world works with energy and all that sort of stuff, right? And this is really just opening my eyes to it all. And then I probably spent in the last 7 years over 100 grand on personal development, just to work on myself. To show up and do different courses, to work with different mentors, to whatever it might be. But for me, it was definitely reaching out to some of these alternative type of practices. Because one thing that I learned from a young age is that psychologists didn't really work for me, because I found it hard to relate to someone that hadn't been there, that was teaching me from a textbook. And I'm not taking away anything from talk therapy. Like, I'm a big believer that there's definitely a place for that.
Yeah.
But I think for certain things, especially for me as a man, my personal experience is I'm not going to take advice from someone who hasn't been there and walked the walk, because how the fuck am I meant to trust that you know what you're talking about?
Yeah.
You're reading from a textbook, and everyone's story is different. Which is, I think, why I've had the great response that I have had, and also the great results that I've had with all the men that I work with, because of that relatability piece, but also my ability to hold space, because I know exactly what they're going through.
Yeah.
At every stage of the journey, I've probably been there. I never shut up, right? I never shut up drugs. That wasn't my thing. But as far as it goes to the depths of addiction, I was smoking ice every single day, not sleeping for 10 days. I was snorting cocaine until my nose bled for weekend on weekend on weekend for years of my life. I was ruining relationships. I was cheating. I was doing all the things. I was a gambler. I spent 2 or 3 grand a day at one point on the pokies. So I've been there. And so I have this beautiful ability now to relate to these men, which makes them feel safe. And that's the big thing, right? You're not going to open up to someone you don't feel safe around.
Yeah.
Because this is one thing that I experienced as well, is a lot of the time I'd tell stories because I've been to psychologists and counselors, and I'd share my story, and they're like, whoa. And that whole experience just there of them going, whoa, is like, okay, you're going to judge me now. That's the first thought, is I'm going to get judged. You don't understand what I'm going through. This is too much for you. I'm just going to, be a burden to you.
Yeah.
Whereas with this, it's like, I've been there. There's not really much that someone can say to me that would shock me. And it's like, okay, brother, I understand what you're saying, and I've actually been there myself. And so tell me more about that. Being able to hold that beautiful space and open a place where men that have probably been the blokiest of blokes down at the pub with the boys on the pokies, snorting lines in the toilet cubicles and talking about women in derogatory ways, as blokes do a lot of the time, right? That's right, I said blokes are boys, not men, because men don't do that. But I've been there, and I've had these men that are, I guess, these boys, that would be in those environments now start to become men, because we've created the space for them to be able to voice their shit, to be able to feel seen and heard, because that's all we really want as human beings, is to feel seen and heard and loved.
Yeah.
It's really simple, to feel like someone understands us and really gets us to the authentic depths of our core.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more, man. And it's really beautiful to hear more of your story, and also like how that translates into how you can help people as well. And I think it's a really important piece. It's like, you're not going to go to a dentist that has like fucked up teeth.
Straight up. You're not going to go to a fat PT.
Yeah. And it is just the way it is at the end of the day. I guess just in terms of, we might wrap things up pretty shortly, but is there anything we haven't touched on that you feel like we should be touching on, or that you want to share?
Man, I think that we've done well to sort of touch on everything we have, but I think the big thing is that, it's looking at the repercussions that your actions have, not just on yourself, okay? And this can be, good or bad, positive or negative. So if you're in a life of, using drugs and alcohol and not coming home to your parents, not coming home to your kids, not coming home to your partner, it's not just affecting you. And this is something I didn't realize for a very long time. When I was out and I wasn't answering the phone, I wasn't coming home for 3 or 4 days on a bender, I'd have a partner at home that was stressing, then I'd, have a weekend where I'd be out on it with the boys and I'd have to pick my son up on a Monday or a Tuesday and I still wasn't present with him. I didn't realize how much that was affecting him. All he wanted was my attention. I'm just there curled up on the couch, being an absolute piece of shit on my phone, probably swiping Tinder, not giving him any attention. All of these things affect everyone around us.
Yeah.
And it's really time for men to stop being so fucking selfish and look themselves in the mirror and look at how everything they're doing is affecting everyone around them. Yeah. Okay? Because the ripple effect doesn't just go in a negative way, it also goes in a positive way. Every single one of the men that I work with have a positive impact on every single person around them, to the point where I think my first client my first client with this work that I do, he was someone who was drinking every day. He was smoking weed before he'd even be able to go in and face his family because he felt that he needed to de-stress from work, to take a load off, right? Because he was a business owner. The only way that he could face his family was by getting high or drinking, because it was just stressful for him. And anyways, after getting sober, he started running, did his first half marathon after 3 weeks of us working together, after never running before in his life. And then was running like ultra marathons and all sorts of stuff, and really found a purpose for that to some degree. And once again, it's like, it was still an addiction to some degree. He was running for himself technically. And obviously the more and more of the work that we did, he started to realize that that's what he's doing. But a lot of people around him started to reach out and go, man, how did you do that? Because you were the fucking worst of the worst. And so once again, the ripple effect goes both ways. Yep. But one thing that a lot of us men, and especially when we're in that disassociated state, any drugs or alcohol will put us in a state of disassociation where we don't feel, right? Which, number one, stops us from being motivated to take action, to move forward in life, stops us from working towards our goals, stops us from doing the things we need to do. And if someone says that, you know what, I'm a functional alcoholic, great. Imagine how functional you could be if you weren't drinking. Simple as that, because you haven't reached your fucking potential yet, mate. But the fact that, so many of us go through life just thinking, oh, it's all right, it's only affecting me. It's not just you. Yeah. It's just down to the micro and macro of this, right? It's the people directly around you, but then the people directly around them, and the people that your people are then talking to about you because of your behaviors. It has an effect on every single one of them. But when you can start to really change something within yourself, show up as the leader that you need to be, that's the thing, right? It's leadership. Okay, as a partner, as a father, as a businessman, whatever it is, right? Showing up as a leader, that then trickles down into the people around you as well and helps to improve them, makes them want to strive for more. Yeah. That's one thing I definitely think we definitely should touch on, and I guess we have now, but it's the fact that our actions don't just affect us, because we as a collective are all, connected.
Yeah, beautiful, man. I'm glad you did touch on that, because it's really, really evident, I guess, especially in, I guess, what was modeled to us, and how that's kind of trickled down. And you sharing your story, I think, highlights that pretty well. But yeah, for me, it was really coming to a similar realization, and it was actually, I guess, like a turning point for me was like identifying my why. Like, why do I want to make all these changes in my life? And I think without that, it's really hard to sort of choose to be on a different path.
Yeah, 100%. The pain of change has to be less than the pain of staying the same.
Yeah.
And if you haven't got an understanding of your purpose or direction or where you're going, it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
You're never going to want to change, right? And this is, like I said to you, the first work that we do with the men that I work with is, number one, get really fucking crystal clear on their direction. But, well, first of all, where they're at. They need to hold a mirror up for the first time in a lot of the time their entire life. They need to hold a mirror up and do the uncomfortable thing to actually see how far fucking down the rabbit hole they are, because a lot of the time we like to, oops, not that bad. We just ignore it because it's easier to do that than actually look at what's going on in a realistic way. Then the second thing is, like you said, getting purpose, getting clear on their why. What is the reason for this? Is it for your family? Is it for you? Is it for, your business? Whatever it might be. But what's the actual purpose behind this? Because our greatest pain will always become our highest purpose if we allow it to. Yeah. If we choose to make the change, because whatever we've been through, our story then becomes something that can empower others.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful, man. Amazing. I guess for those that want to find you, where's the best place to find you?
Ben Lowe
with you.
Coaching. Ben Lowe Coaching on Instagram.
Yeah.
So BenLowe Coaching is the best place to find me. Hopefully my account's still active because I did just get banned from Instagram again on Tuesday. That's the third time this year.
Wow.
For some controversial content that I used to put out of me snorting lines of creatine off a plate, which was a great hook. But apparently I was promoting the use of illegal drugs. So hopefully my profile's still up. At this point in time, I'm just
I
stopped from
think it was
advertising.
as of an hour ago.
Yeah, so we're good. Yeah, we're good at the moment. Hopefully
Yeah.
I don't do anything else to put myself further into meta jail.
Yeah.
But
Awesome,
Ben
man.
Lowe Coaching is the best place, and I'm always
Yeah.
open for a chat. So feel free to shoot me a DM. I like to personally reply to everyone that does reach out because
Yeah.
I know how hard it can be to even make that first move to reach out for support.
Cool, man. Awesome. How do you feel about finishing with a rapid fire?
Let's go. Run it up.
So, what's one quote that you live by?
Your greatest pain will always become your highest purpose.
Beautiful. One habit that changed your life.
Gym.
What lie did you grow up believing?
I was the victim.
And what is your current edge that you're trying to move past?
Being motivated by wealth.
And who's your biggest inspiration?
Myself.
I love that.
Thinking
Epic,
back
man.
to who I was, to who I am now, I inspire myself every day, brother.
Yeah. Epic. Well, thanks for everything, man.
My pleasure,
Really
my man.
enjoyed it.
Thanks for the chat, bro, and thanks for having me
Yeah.
on. It's been great. It's the first
Yeah.
podcast I've done in a long time, so thank you.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Hopefully run one back another time.
Be very keen, bro, once I get mine
Yeah.
back up and running for sure.
Yeah. Cool, man.
My guy.